What's up, everybody? Welcome to our second video in the sharpening series. First, we want to thank WorkSharp for sending all of this gear for us to use and to show you so that you can keep your TOPS knives sharp and working properly. There is a coupon code that they've given to us to share with you guys. It's going to be somewhere on your screen, probably around here. Check that out. You'll go to worksharptools.com. You'll be able to use that coupon code to get I believe it's 15% off of the different tools that you see us using here. Next up, we have the WorkSharp. This is called the Knife and Tool Sharpener. This is the Ken Onion edition. It has a kind of an upgraded system for the sharpening angles. We also were lucky enough to get the one that includes the blade grinder attachment. So we'll do a little bit with both of these so that you can kind of see how they work and maybe some different applications for each. But this is the one that I would say it's one of their biggest investments. I believe this Ken Onion edition I think is $150 retail. This is another $50 if I remember right to add to this part. So you know it's an investment. You want to make sure that you're getting the right sharpener for you. So don't buy the powered one unless you're sure that's what you want. Again, this is going to give you a convex edge. If you don't want a convex edge, this is not the right sharpener for you. Doesn't matter how cool it is, how awesome of a tool this is, if it's not going to provide the kind of edge you want, don't buy this. However, if you don't mind a convex edge, or if you like a convex edge, it's hard to beat this system. The whole goal that they were going for with this system is they wanted to take a full-sized knife grinder. Most custom makers, even us when we sharpen our own knives, we use a 2-inch by 72-inch belt on a large grinder to sharpen blades, to shape blades, to do all that kind of stuff. What's cool about this is WorkSharp said, well, why don't we make that small? I think they've pretty much nailed it. You probably can't get much smaller than this, at least now. I'm sure in several years they will. But this system takes a large grinder, shrinks it down, makes it kind of easy to use for the normal person out there. Make sure that you read the directions on this. Make sure that you know what you're getting into before you start going on this, because this has the ability to go quite a bit faster than that other tool sharpener did. You can definitely mess up a knife if you're not careful with a system like this. So make sure that you know how it works. Make sure that you check out all the features and all that kind of stuff before you really get sharpening on this. It's going to take a little bit of time. WorkSharp also has videos where they go kind of more in depth on all the little parts and pieces and details on this machine. So if I don't cover enough of that here, check out their YouTube channel as well. Some of the basics. First, it comes with a set of belts. It comes with a full set. Everything from a pretty coarse grit up to a stropping belt. And the cool thing about this system is the way it's packaged. It comes with the way that they package this in the box is actually like a quick start guide that explains the different grits of each belt, kind of based on their color and the wording that's printed on the inside of it. And then it also gives you an idea of what belts you should use depending on what you're trying to sharpen, and including the edge angles. So, you know, they've got kitchen and fillet knives. You got a much sharper angle and maybe a different progression of belts than you would something that's more like a hunting knife or a pocket knife. So this part that you take out of the box, make sure you look at that before you throw it away. You've gone through the instructions, you've checked out the little quick start guide, you feel like you're pretty much ready to go on this thing. All right, a couple of last things before we put a belt on and start going. This edge guide is actually movable, so you can move that out of the way. If it's maybe there's a larger knife, or maybe you're sharpening a tool instead of a knife, that might just be in your way. You can actually fold that in and it's out of the way of whatever you're trying to sharpen. However, if you're just sharpening knives on this, it's actually pretty handy to have that out because you can rest the blade on this, and these little plastic pieces here, they actually roll so that they're not messing up your edge. Boom, boom. the edge guide, pretty ingenious little thing. It also helps, again, it helps make sure that you're not pushing your blade too far down into the belt, which you don't want to do, because that's going to take away more material that you're not necessarily wanting to take away. And the last thing before you get started, put your belt on here, is the angle guide. So this comes set to 25 degrees. I believe they all come that way. That may not be the case, but ours came automatically set to 25 degrees, which again for our knives is the right angle. However, you can go anywhere from 15 to 30 degree to a 30 degree edge angle on these. So 15 degrees, all you do is just turn this knob. Say that you're working on a kitchen knife and you want to get that thing razor sharp. You can just turn that down to 15 degrees, and these guides automatically close in to match that angle on each side. You can go up to 30 degrees. You know, say that maybe you've got a big chopper like an Alchete or something like that, and you want a really wide angle on it because the only thing you do with that tool is chop wood. Well, that might be better for you because that edge is going to be a little bit stronger, lasts a little bit longer, and kind of wedge wood out of the way. So, but again, typically you're looking at probably about 25 degrees on these. Okay, setting your belts. I'm going to skip the coarse grit belt, which is the equivalent of 120 grit. That is more for roughing out an edge than it is for resharpening. So you'd probably only use this belt if you are really dull. You've got an edge that's maybe chipped or rolled, or you've just beat the crap out of your knife and you need to get it sharp again. That's what this would be good for. I'm going to start with the next grit up, which is the equivalent of, I don't know, they're just calling it an X65. I believe it says on their website somewhere what that is equal to. I believe it's somewhere more like about a 220 grit. So we'll start there. To load this on, this wheel has your spring. So you're just gonna push that in, put this over the two other wheels, maybe. Come on, get in there. There we go. Okay, once you get it around that, you just let that go. That creates the tension that keeps the belt in place. This is just a trick that I've learned from working here at TOPS. It's a good idea to just kind of give this a little bit of a spin, make sure that that belt doesn't start falling off of the wheel. That might indicate that it's either not installed properly, or maybe you've got a problem with your system. So once I know that that looks like it's gonna spin in place pretty good, I just give it a little test real quick. Make sure that I'm out of the way of that belt in case it does fly off. And we should be ready to start sharpening. Now, the instructions for this machine, the way they've described it, you've got your trigger down here that actually starts it. This wheel can kind of help you set that speed to higher or lower. And then there's a button that will actually lock it open. So if I turn this on, maybe. If I turn this on and lock that button in place, it stays on its own. And then you just pull the trigger again to let it loose. So this red knob speeds it up or down, and then this can lock it in place and keep it on. That's more useful for the edge grinder attachment than it is for this, because the instructions for this say to put your knife into place. Once it's in place, then pull the trigger and start pulling the knife through at the same time. Now, I'm left-handed, so that's gonna be kind of awkward. I actually do have this system in my home, and when I use it, I just turn it on and lock it on, and then I switch to my left hand and pull it through, and I can make it work that way. But to get an even sharpening on your edge, that's a good way to go, because the belt starts when you start pulling it through, and it stops when you get your tip about halfway off of that belt. So the same rule applies here, that you want to pull it through till you get to the tip. When you get the tip about halfway off the belt, pull up and away as you let go of the trigger. And that should help keep a good clean angle across the whole edge. You may have noticed that this is our Mil-Spie folder. This is a recurve blade. This kind of a system is actually really good when you're resharpening recurves, because the belt moves a little bit as you pull it through, and that will kind of help keep that S curve that the blade has. These are actually notoriously difficult to resharpen on like wider stones, wet stones, you know, things like that. Those are tough to use when you're resharpening a recurve blade. However, this works great for that. So another reason that this might be the right tool for you. So we'll give this a shot right-handed. Here we go. Yeah, that's a little weird for me. So again, the idea when you start this is that you're pushing this knife against the edge guide, not against the belt. So it's an important thing to keep in mind. This helps make sure that you get the even edge across the whole thing. So. That is a clean new belt. Okay, we're gonna do this a few times to try to raise a burr. I'm not quite getting to that tip. So again, after only a few passes, I'm already feeling a burr that is raised. But again, I'm feeling it not so much on the tip, because I've got to kind of roll this up a little bit more. And I'm not quite as much at the beginning, although it is pretty close. So in only a few passes, we've already started to raise a burr. So that's one thing to keep in mind, that this system is quick, real easy to use. That's why so many people like these. So we'll run a few more times, see if we can get that tip, to see if we can raise that burr on the tip as well. Yep, just that last little bit. And this is what another thing that's kind of cool with these systems is it's hard to, when you're first learning how to resharpen, it's hard to know whether you're doing a good job, because it takes a while to raise a burr on a stone. On something like this, after only 3-4 passes, we've already raised a burr on a lot of this edge, and that is something that that tells you really fast what part of the knife you're not quite getting properly on the sharpener. So for me, on both the last system and on this system, I'm not quite getting the tips right. So that's a good thing to just notice while you're going through. You kind of check your own work. So we'll try this a few more times, try and get that tip good. A little bit. Okay, last little bit. Okay, that's pretty good. So I'm feeling, like I say, I'm feeling along the entire edge, and I can kind of feel my skin catching all the way until that last little bit on the tip. So we're gonna try that 1 or 2 more times, try and get that tip, and then we'll switch to the other side. All right, so I feel like I've got a pretty good burr raised on this. It feels pretty even across the entire knife. So we're gonna switch to the other side, and then it's the same spiel as last time. We're gonna do about 10 passes, and then we're gonna move up in belts. And And at that point, we'll start doing one pass on each side and just keep doing that until we get to the highest belt, and then we should be sharp. So. It takes a little bit of getting used to trying to get the timing right so that as you pull the trigger and start moving the knife, that the blade makes the same amount of contact all the way through. That's important. You don't want to go too fast or too slow, and you want the blade to make the same amount of contact here as it does here and as it does in the middle. Okay. Okay, so that burr is definitely starting to roll to the other side. Okay, yeah, probably 3 or 4 more. So we've done roughly 10 passes on each side. Again, if you're counting at home and I'm off, whatever, it feels pretty even to me. I do feel like I've rolled the burr back to the other side. So what we're gonna do, now that that feels pretty good, looks pretty good on each side, is we're gonna swap the belts. We're gonna move up to the next one. So a good rule of thumb is not to skip belts. So to switch the belt, same thing. We relieve that tension from that spring. The belt pops right off, nice and easy. We're gonna move up to the next grit. Again, my recommendation is don't skip grits. The reason for that is that in order to keep your edge nice and even, say that your edge had a little bit of a roll or a little bit of a chip in it. If you skip grits, you might not take that all the way out. The other thing you might not do is end up with an edge that's consistent and even, because this really fine grit belt may not take off some of the burr that this not quite as fine grit belt will, if that makes any sense. But again, point is, I personally don't skip grits. Even if I'm not gonna do a lot of passes on each belt, I usually just don't skip. So, all right, got that belt on. Feel like that's pretty good. Test that real quick. Make sure that I don't hit myself in the face. From here, it's basically the same thing, but rather than do 10 passes on each side, I might do 3 or 4 passes on each side. I might even just do 1 pass on each side and just feel the edge. As long as it feels like that burr is just kind of disappearing and getting smaller and smaller, then I'll probably just do 1 pass on each side, do that, maybe 5 passes each side, and then move right up to the next grip belt. So from here, it tends to go a little bit faster, especially now that you've seen this. Okay, that actually felt pretty clean. So I'm just gonna switch back and forth, do about 5 passes per side, and then we'll check it again. And at this point, I'm not putting a lot of pressure, and I'm keeping the belt speed pretty low because it's starting to look fairly well polished of an edge. I don't need it to go super fast to really clean that burr off. So, say we've got maybe a little bit more to go. Okay, do one more pass and then we'll switch the belt. So that burr definitely feels mostly gone. This is already feeling pretty sharp. So we'll move up a grit. Again, if this is one of those knives where you're not worried about it being razor sharp, if you're gonna be cutting something that requires a really fine edge, then you're probably not done. If you're cutting things, you know, you're just cutting cardboard, you're cutting some wood in the shop, you're just cutting things that don't require a super clean cut, this might be good enough, and I might just move on with my day at this point. But because we have these extra belts, I want to go ahead and get it looking real nice, get it nice and clean, make sure that the whole edge feels real good. So we'll keep moving up. This is their X4 fine belt. At this point, you're looking at really fine. I mean, we're probably talking about 1,000 grit, maybe more than that. And then their polishing belt is roughly the equivalent of about 6,000 grit. That's really polishing an edge. So with this belt, we're in that same boat where we want to do pretty much just one pass per side, because we're no longer roughing out an edge. At this point, it's pretty sharp. Now what we're trying to do, make that edge just a little bit finer, as sharp as possible. So we're at this point, this is the equivalent of honing the edge. So, okay, good to go. Again, we'll do one pass per side. We'll do about five on each side. We'll test the edge and then we'll probably polish it a little bit and we should be done. All right, that definitely feels pretty clean. I'm not really feeling a burr on either side. Might just hit this 1 or 2 more times on each side and then we'll test it out real quick and see where we're at. Okay, let's give this a shot. Yeah, that feels pretty clean. There was maybe one little spot in the middle where it caught. No, it looks pretty clean. That was probably just my fault. So, as you can see, like I said, we haven't even done the little stropping belt and it's already sharp. I mean, that was cutting through that paper really clean. So really, you're basically done here. If you want to polish the edge, I say do it. Otherwise, you could probably stop at this grit, move on with your day. Because we got it, let's go ahead and polish it though. One thing to keep in mind with this stropping belt is that it is narrower than these other belts. So when you put it on, like you may not have noticed that at first. When you put it on, you're gonna realize, oh wait, this thing doesn't quite fit the same. So, but the same rule applies. Check this, make sure that it seems like it's pretty even on that belt, especially where this one's narrower. If it's not on just right, it'll definitely fly off. So we check that out. It kind of centers itself on the wheels, and then we're good to go. So for the stropping, we're in the same boat. We really just want to run this one pass per side. We'll do that, about 5 passes per side. We should have an edge that is just that not just is sharp, but also looks polished, looks clean, just looks really good. Since we're here, one thing to note: the amount of pressure that you're putting on the machine and on the knife while you're doing this should be really light. As you're pulling it through this system, you shouldn't be pushing down on these. You should just be rolling it across them and just making contact. Same thing with the edge guides. You shouldn't be pushing hard on these to try to move them out of the way. You should just be making contact as you're pulling this through. Basically the point is, let the belt do the work. You have a machine here. You don't have to do anything. All you got to do is pull your knife through and let the belt do the work. So you're not putting a lot of downward pressure. You're not putting a lot of pressure away. You're just getting the knife where it's supposed to be and pulling it through, and that's all it takes. So let's go ahead and polish this. Okay, so one of the things that, one of the reasons to go ahead and polish the edge that is actually a good reason is that it helps you see any spots that maybe you didn't get just right. So again, I'm still not quite getting the tip on this. It's just that last little bit. So I'm gonna call it good because we're just gonna go out and use this thing. But it gives you an idea of what you're doing right and maybe where you're not quite pulling this off. So this edge looks real even until I get to the tip. But on the other side, it actually looks pretty polished all the way through. So that's one thing that, an extra reason to kind of use that polishing belt is you can see when you're done any spots where you're inconsistent. Maybe you've twisted the knife a little bit, or maybe you're not quite raising that tip enough to get it to make the right contact with the belt, like me. But it's one of those things that just kind of helps make sure that you're doing it right. So at this point, I feel like we're pretty darn sharp. Yeah, we're there. So that is the Ken Onion knife and tool sharpener. I believe this is also the Elite Edition. If you're looking for some more information, if you're looking for more in-depth on the different parts and pieces, again, check out WorkSharp's, check out their YouTube channel. They've got a lot of content there that's really good. However, this Mil-Spie is ready to go.